So it's time for my June wrap up. I haven't done too badly this month considering I read 2 really big books, so let's get into it. Firstly, I started the month with LMNOP by Mark Dunn. This is a book that's been on my shelf for a few years now, and I found out about it when I was researching epistolary novels for something I was writing. I've never seen anybody else speak about this until last month when Lauren from Lauren in the Books read it. I will link her down below. And we sort of discussed it as I was reading it, and that sort of pushed me into picking it up finally. This is basically, it's written in letters, and it's set in a world where the man who wrote the sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," which uses every letter in the alphabet, he is sort of revered as a god, and there is a statue in the middle of the town with the sentence underneath it. LMNOP, which is a genius name, is writing her cousin letters, and we sort of learned straight away that the phone lines have been cut off for months now. They have no other way of communicating with each other but letters. And then a letter falls off the statue, and the government start debating what they should do about this and decide to take it as a definitive sign that they should not use that letter anymore. So as of a certain date, that letter is banned and people are forbidden to use it. This carries on happening, and as it goes, the communication that they are allowed gets narrower until they are living in a completely dystopian world where they have no way of communicating. Everybody has pretty much been exiled, there's barely anybody left, and everything has just gone to pot. This was a genius idea, and I had to give this book 5 stars. I know Lauren gave it 3, I think, because she didn't find that the development was necessarily there, and I do agree with her there. It goes from a point of there being a lot of people in the town and just a few people being exiled to there being absolutely no one. In a way, I can see how that works, because obviously the whole idea is that they cannot communicate among each other, so they can't know how bad the situation is getting. But for the reader, it kind of read as a bit jolting, and I can completely understand the lack of development issue. But for me, the genius plan behind this and the effort that must have gone into the writing, finding words that didn't have the forbidden letters in, was just astonishing. So I had to give this 5 stars. The good thing about this is that you would think that because letters are disappearing at quite a rapid rate, letters being written would be quite jolted and confused, but Mark Dunn somehow manages, until there's only about 4 letters left, he manages to write letters that don't seem jolting at all. And if you didn't know that there was letters missing from them, you wouldn't notice, because the writing is just exquisite, and the effort that must have gone into finding each word is just completely admirable. I think I would definitely recommend this, especially if you're a writer, because this is just some feat to achieve. So yes, there's that one. Then my library pick for the month was the book of Lost Things by John Connolly. I was very disappointed by this because I have been wanting to get this book for a very long time now, and I just did not enjoy it. I found it really, really boring. I was so excited at the beginning, and I'll read you out this first little paragraph, which is just so good. "Once upon a time, for that is how all stories should begin, there was a boy who lost his mother. He had, in truth, been losing her for a very long time. The disease that was killing her was a creeping, cowardly thing, a sickness that ate away at her from the inside, slowly consuming the light within, so that her eyes grew a little less bright with each passing day, and her skin a little more pale." So that beginning is excellent. And this little boy David, his mum dies in the beginning. Then he starts going a bit crazy, and he starts hearing his books talking to him. And still I was like, this is so good. His dad then meets another woman, and they move in with her. And David has the attic room at the very top, and starts finding out that there used to be a little boy in there, and he went missing with his sister. And he then goes a bit of a downward spiral and ends up in the garden, and a tree is beckoning him, and he walks through the tree and ends up in this mystical fairyland kind of place where he meets a woodcutter who tells him that his best chance of getting home is to go and meet the king across the land. The woodcutter starts going with him, but they are being pursued by these evil, wolfy human things, and it's just meant to be a rip-roaring adventure, to be honest, but I really didn't find it rip-roaring. I found it boring. I just didn't enjoy this at all. The storyline was lacking, to say the least, and I just found that it was trying to be something that it was just failing to be. What I think John Connolly should have done with this is gone for a kids' book with little nods at the audience that are adults, because what's magical about kids' books with little adult sections in them that kids wouldn't pick up on is that sort of secret wink that makes it just so fun. And also that magical feeling of coming back to a kids' book that you loved when you were younger and seeing completely different things in it. But because it was a book for adults, it was just lacking, and it just missed out on that special magical thing. There was actually an interview with John Connolly at the end of my copy that asked him why he didn't make this a book for children, and he said something like wanting the adults to understand the undertone that he thinks kids would have missed. Yes, they would have, but that's exactly the point of an undertone. So I was quite annoyed, and I really didn't like. Then I read The Crimson Petal and the White by Michelle Faber. I won't go into this too much because I have done a full-length review, and it's quite a hard book to go into in a short period of time. So if you want to know more, I will link the review down below. But this is about Victorian London. We predominantly follow a prostitute called Sugar, and it sort of looks at the power that prostitutes exerted over men and the men trying to sort of take that power back almost. It's really good, and I would recommend this for anybody. It's so good. Then I read Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. This looks at, it's all done in progress reports, so in a lot of ways this reminded me of LMNOP. This looks at a man called Charlie Gordon who has an IQ at the beginning of the book of 68. He is signed up for a scientific experiment in which they will do an operation on him to make him a genius. There is a mouse in here who they've already done the operation on, that's Algernon, and Charlie meets this mouse and they go head to head in this maze for a few days, and Charlie is really ashamed because he can't beat this mouse. Algernon is a genius mouse. They then do the operation on Charlie, and at the beginning his progress reports don't change. Like, his writing is very simplistic, his understanding of things is very simplistic, and he's happy, he's blissfully ignorant, he has a job in the baker's, he's quite happy, he sweeps up the floors, he cleans the ovens, and he has friends, and he's happy in his little bubble. And then the experiment slowly starts to implement, and he becomes this genius, and his understanding develops. So it's really interesting that it happens gradually, because if it happened all of a sudden after his experiment, it wouldn't have been as impactful. But slowly his progress reports go from being very bad to being really intelligent and discussing really intelligent themes. Charlie starts, however, realising things that he didn't necessarily notice before that upset him. For example, he notices that people who he thought were laughing with him were sometimes laughing at him. He notices that there is theft going on in the bakery that he has sort of been used as a pawn for, and he starts falling out with his friends because he realises that maybe they're not his friends after all, and he starts realising these in-depth emotional things that he was happy not knowing, and he becomes quite miserable. He also starts feeling sexual feelings and all the confusion that comes with that for the first time. My favourite bit in here was when it is compared to Adam and Eve and the gaining of knowledge being quite a dangerous thing. And this is a really heartbreaking and impactful read, and it's really important as well. I have to say, I think this is best read in a short period of time. It's only a short book, and I think the impact is really felt if you read it in a short period of time. I read over 3 days, so it wasn't as impactful as I think it could have been. I really enjoyed the ending because I read about 150 pages in one day, and I really enjoyed that. But other than that, I read this quite slowly, and I think that did hinder my enjoyment of this, but it was really good anyway. So I would recommend this. Then I had my first 5-star short story collection ever, and that is Catamarans' Broken Things. This is such a lyrical, beautiful book with really short stories in. They're only, I think the longest is 5 pages, but they are beautiful. They look at the sort of disturbing undertones of life, and they're just really good. I would recommend this to anybody. Then I read Roald Dahl's The Witches. This is good fun. I'm getting really into Roald Dahl. I read this in one evening and I enjoyed it thoroughly. This looks at a little boy whose parents die, and he ends up living with his gran, and his gran starts telling him about witches and the way that they are sort of in the cracks of society and how to spot witches. They then go on holiday to the English coast, and end up staying in a hotel where the witches are having a convention and the head witch is there, and the little boy ends up accidentally being locked in the hall when they are having their convention, and things go from there. It's good fun. I have to say, I really don't think Roald Dahl would get past modern day publishers. He is so dodgy. I mean, there's a bit in here where the gran tells her grandson that he should smoke a cigar a day to keep himself healthy. I mean, really. But it's still fun and I still really enjoyed it. Then I read A Little Life by Hani Anigahara. I'm not going to do an individual review of this because so many people have done one already, and I pretty much have similar feelings to most people's reviews that I have seen. I gave it 3 stars because I didn't hate it. It didn't incite many feelings in me, to be honest. I can see all the problems in this, and I think the main problem is bad editing. Yeah, it's just, I was thinking about this in terms of my video that I made recently about different reading tastes and different people liking different things. This has got bad characters, this has got bad plot, this has got bad writing. I can see why people hate this book, but I don't necessarily see why people love it, and I don't think it should have been nominated for all the awards it was nominated for. That said, I didn't hate this. I think its flaws were just that it's kind of, Hani Anigahara has not quite mastered her art yet. It's kind of like a typical debut novel, I think, even though I don't think it is her debut novel, but that's how it reads. Also, a lot of the problems I had with this were the problems I had with Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I think they have the same flaws in them, and it's interesting to see how other people who hated this loved Americana, because I think they're very, very similar in their issues. For the first 70 pages, this follows 3 people. This follows JB, Malcolm and Willem, and sort of follows their careers and their livelihoods, which could have been cut, absolutely, was unnecessary and was a bad way to start because it was just boring. We then get into the main story, which is about Jude, their friend, who has been abused as a child and has lived quite a sad life, cuts himself, tries to kill himself, and is just a tortured soul, basically. And it's gratuitous misery, this book. It is chucking as much misery into a book as you possibly could. That said, it didn't make me overly sad. There were parts where I felt really sorry for Jude, but Jude was not a developed character, other than the fact that he had misery. Hani Anigahara seemed to have, and this was especially prevalent when she was talking about the 3 friends actually, she seemed to have this weird fixation on the fact that what makes a person and what develops a person is their race, the money they have behind them, and their sexuality. And that seemed to be her 3 points. However, I was confused because I didn't understand what race any of the people were. Jude was meant to be some confused race that nobody quite knew because nobody knew his origins, but I'm sorry, you would have at least some understanding from what he looks like, which we never learnt. It was just nobody knew what race he was. We don't know if he's got tan skin, we don't know if he's Asian, and we don't know if he's coloured, we don't know any of these things, we just know he's a confused race, which was the same with a lot of characters. I think some of them were meant to be coloured, but I missed out completely on what was going on there. Also, I feel like it's just not enough. That's not what makes a person. Their class, their race, and their sexuality are not the only things that matter when you are making a person. So there were issues with that, especially the focus on class and where you come from being everything, you know. And it kind of very much did read like, because Jude had a bad beginning, he was always going to have a bad life. There was no hope for him. And also, I don't want to say too much about his childhood, although I don't think it ruins anything. It's quite transparent what's going to be the problem. Every person that Jude came across in his childhood was bad and treated him badly, and that's not dissimilar to his relationships as an adult. He has one relationship with a man that is just so irritating because you just want to slap Jude and say, get a grip of yourself, sort yourself out, and tell the guy to piss off. Like, it just really irritated me. So what's annoying is that as much as Jude has all these people who are so bad to him throughout his life, he has his friendship group and also his adoptive parents who adopt him when he's quite a bit older. And they seem to have just this unending patience with Jude. And even I spent 700 odd pages with him, and I wanted to hit him and tell him to get a grip and pick himself up. And they have spent years, and yet they're still so understanding and so delicate around him and so gentle and, oh, poor Jude. No, people aren't unendingly sympathetic. People get annoyed. People don't like people who are miserable all the time. They will put up with it to a certain extent. But when Jude shows no desire to improve himself, no desire to get counselling, no desire to in any way make his life any better for himself, people would say, do you know what, it's on your back, do what you want. They didn't say that though, because, you know, oh, poor Jude, we'll look after Jude all the time, oh, Jude. No, people are not like that. That's not realistic. The people in this were very unrealistic. A lot of people have said that you can see Hanya Yanagihara in this too much, and I can completely understand why, because Hanya Yanagihara didn't get to know her characters. She just thought, I want them to do this, this and this, and I will bend them to my will, and you can really tell that she has bent them into shape, and they don't fit. They're all bent out of shape because it's not things that people would do. I didn't hate this. I read a lot worse, but there are issues, and it's far from a perfect book, and I didn't love it. Then, I don't normally talk about books I haven't finished, but I've got Catamarans Manifesto here. I forgot to put this dust jacket back on, but you can see the spine. I have got about nearly halfway into this. The reason I'm talking about this is because this is my non-fiction pick for the month, and I want to just say, it's not my fault that I haven't read a non-fiction book this month. This is the first time, but this was my pick, and I picked it up expecting to just read it through. But this is sort of a collection of Catamarans articles, and I thought I was still going to be able to read it through, but I read about 5 of them in one sitting, and I was just like, I need a break. I think, like, it's not a book that you can read in one sitting at all. It's a book that you pick up and read an article of every few days, I would say. So I haven't finished it, but I will carry on reading it. I don't know if I'll finish it even in the next month. The thing is that it's sort of also set into sections, so there are a lot of articles about the same issues and the same things in each section, and I just had enough. I couldn't read anymore. I have to say, I had worries going into this that it was going to be one of those celebrity books that talks about politics, but from a completely privileged standpoint that doesn't really talk about the practicalities. Actually, I would say has gone with the political manifesto purely to sell copies, because I would not say this is political. Like, there are some articles that talk about council housing and sort of people's attitude towards that, but I wouldn't say this is a political book in the slightest. So far, I think they've actually done themselves a hardship, because this is good fun and it's got some really funny articles in it so far. I will carry on reading that one. So that's everything. There was actually more than I thought there was, but there we go. Bye.